Welcome to Real Estate Radio Power Investing, an informative and engaging hour discussing everything you need to know about the world of real estate investing. Your host, Tom K. Wilson, provides you with insight and guidance from his years of experience as a successful real estate entrepreneur on how to buy, sell, finance, and invest in real estate, and much more. Now, here's your host for Real Estate Radio Power Investing, Tom K. Wilson.
Always great to have you with us. Thanks for tuning in to our Real Estate Power Investing program, where we empower you with the education to maximize your investing success. We're broadcasting from the #1 business radio station in the San Francisco Bay Area, KDOW AM 1220, the Wall Street Business Network. I'm Tom K. Wilson, your host for this weekly program on real estate investing. If you can't make the live show, you can catch our podcast on TomWilsonProperties.com or on iTunes or on YouTube. You can go to TomWilsonProperties.com for a lot of investor education on both houses, multifamily, commercial, and syndications. We always welcome your inputs for suggestions for topics and guests to have in, and any topics or any questions that you have that we can assist you with. We're glad to provide you responses and assist you in any way. Today, we have someone on our program that we've not had before, and his name is Greg Pinneo. Greg is a Northwest native and a graduate of the University of Washington. For over 5 decades, Greg has been a full-time real estate entrepreneur and has become a recognized expert in acquisition, finance, negotiation, property management, and the philosophical mindset that makes possibility a reality. He has been on his own since 18 years old when he bought his first property in 1976. So he's been doing it for 5 decades, same as myself, except he figured it out earlier than I did. It took me 30 years in high tech before I made the full-time switch. Greg gave many years to the School of Business at Seattle Pacific University, teaching real estate investment, negotiations, finance, and principles that create success in life. And Greg also is as a proud father of 6 children and a wife whom he's passionate about, which I can certainly relate to. And Greg, it's so nice to have you on the program.
I appreciate it, Tom. My one correction is I think this is just beginning my 5th decade. I've been at it 4 decades now and just starting my 5th decade. So I guess that's still old enough, yeah?
Yeah, well, I think you've been investing in 5 different decades, right?
In 5 different decades, correct. I guess we could put it that way. Yeah,
yeah.
It's a privilege to be here. I really appreciate it. Bob
Helms of the Father Robert Helms, of the Real Estate Guys radio show. They talk about his being the godfather of real estate, investing in 7 decades. Can you imagine?
Wow.
Well,
no.
If we're very very fortunate, maybe we'll see that someday. Huh?
Maybe. I hope.
So, Greg, at 18, you got your first property. Tell us about that.
You know, it was a life-changing moment, not getting the property, but the aha that came after I got the property. I was raised by a dad that made it very clear that when you graduate from high school, you're on your own. That's that. There was no negotiating. And so I took that very seriously, and as it turns out, I was able to while looking at a rental property, I was able to have a discussion with the property owner, and it turned out we were able to work out a deal for me to buy it. And okay, I bought the house, mission accomplished. That was really all I was set out to do, is have a place to live. But the first installment payment came around on a privately financed deal. The payment was $206.10.
Oh, my gosh. How are you going to take care of that? Huh?
Well, I know, but it seemed a lot at the time. But the aha moment came when 2 buddies of mine who asked to live with me each threw $100 on my desk and said, "Here's the rent." And it occurred to me in that moment that those 2 guys were buying me my house, the house I was living in. I was living in my own house for $6 and a dime.
Mhm.
And Tom, I became very passionate in that moment about buying a lot more real estate because I just sensed that if I could just buy more real estate, find more people to pay for it, that everything I'd wanted to do, every dream I had, and you remember those dreams when we were 18, you wanted to do everything, right?
And you were invincible.
Exactly. And so I just dove in head first and have been doing it ever since, literally full time, every day of my life ever since. That's what I've been doing. So it was a great start for sure.
Aren't these crossroads and paradigm shifters in life absolutely fascinating? My story of intro is that I rented my first house when I moved to what was to become Silicon Valley and found the landlord lived next door and he owned half the street. I'd never heard of that before, but I never forgot it.
Right, exactly.
That's what planted those seeds. Was your family involved in real estate?
No, they weren't. My dad is a longtime insurance broker. And, we owned the homes that we lived in, that I grew up in, but no, never involved in real estate. He's a very handy guy, so we learned how to do pretty much everything a house might need. We didn't subcontract anything in our family homes, so my brother and I learned how to use the tools, how to do things, which, of course, that's a lot of people start. They buy a house, they do all the work themselves, and I guess I started like so many doing that. But I was very passionate about keeping real estate. I didn't want to sell something I worked hard on. So I started keeping most everything that I was doing, and keeping homes turned into buying apartment buildings, and buying apartment buildings turned into building a lot of apartment buildings from scratch. And always with the model that plan A was always keep. And that's worked out pretty well.
What other lessons did you learn along the way in addition to keeping product and that tenants can pay for your investment?
One of the most significant things I learned, really kind of hardcore real estate, was a gentleman named Tom Newman, who's no longer with us. He had a finance mind that just blew me away, and he told me once in his very kind of a nasally voice. He said, Pinneo, he said, real estate is just the clothing that finance wears. Well, I'll tell you, I had to think about that a long time, but I grew to understand that at the center of real estate entrepreneurship, finance and how the deal was structured really drove the show. The real estate, if it's well located, was less important than the finance structure behind the deal. And so I became a student of finance. I also was very blessed to have met Dr. Michael Shadow, who is the world's greatest instructor in the art form of negotiation. And so I kind of had the philosophical upbringing with a mentor, A.B. Label. I had the finance influence by Tom Newman, and I had the negotiation influence with Dr. Shadow. And those three things were like a trifecta that threw gas on the fire of my achievement at a very young age.
What are some pitfalls that folks can avoid by learning from those like you and myself who had some failures along the way?
Boy, I'll tell you, that's a great question, and Tom, when I get to sit down with people and talk, I can tell them quite honestly that the reason I have value isn't what's gone right, it's what's gone wrong. The reason you should listen to me is that along the way of 41 years of doing this, there's been things that I didn't see coming. And so it really puts an emphasis on knowing what you're getting into. You can't mitigate or flex toward safety if you don't even see certain risks coming. The devil in this business is in the details, especially as you get into high-level amounts of volume, high-level amounts of finance, when you're dealing in complicated syndication work, all of the details. I was raised with one brother, no sisters. He's a year and a half older. And boy, did we rough it up. But we had this philosophy: no blood, no foul, right? Well, in the real estate world, in the business world, that philosophy just doesn't apply. There can be absolutely no blood, and if a detail is off, you can be held liable for things you don't even realize you're risking. Of course, the more deals you do, the greater the exposure you have, the more employees you have, the more brokers in your real estate office. This all adds to the challenge of mitigating liabilities and being very attentive to the details that this business is just inundated with. So I'm all about having a flight instructor in the right seat that has really flown a lot of hours, has had a lot of close calls, who really has a lot of seasoning. Education is where it all begins. At a young age, I didn't have people who were really teaching me the technicalities, so I learned a few lessons the hard way, Tom.
Isn't it fascinating? Human nature tends to hang on to the lessons learned from failures sometimes more than successes.
No question. And we can be frozen by the details, afraid to make a move. Sometimes we even think to ourselves, I'm going to play it safe and just not do that because I might fail. And we think ourselves smart for mitigating risk by not moving, by doing nothing. The fact of the matter is that when we do nothing, we risk regret. And so either way you look at it, there's risk involved. There's risk of failure. There's risk of regret. I have long since solved that equation that I am much more afraid of regret than I ever am of failure. Failure, you can dust yourself off, get up, and move on.
Good words.
Learn. Regret, you pack around like a pallet board of bricks the rest of your life.
Greg, we're going to take a break on that note. Yes, learn from your mistakes and make sure you use them and apply it to future transactions and future things that you do. We have Greg Pinneo with us talking about real estate investing, the philosophy behind it, some of the fundamental core elements that you should hang on to. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Real Estate Radio Power Investing. Streaming live on iHeart, TuneIn, and KDOW.biz. For more information on today's topic or guest, visit TomWilsonProperties.com. That's TomWilsonProperties.com. Again, your host for today's edition of Real Estate Radio Power Investing, Tom K. Wilson.
With us today is Greg Pinneo, who's a longtime investor and educator, and a fundamentalist philosophically when he's talking to us a bit about not just the nuts and bolts of real estate investing, but some of the core values and things that you can learn and need to learn in order to be successful in life, not just real estate. Right, Greg?
I like that approach, Tom, because success is the sum of the whole. It's so much more than just a bank account or net worth. It's the sum of the whole. So you're exactly right. I approach this whole thing that way.
Greg, you've talked about you were talking about risk a little bit before the break, and can you talk a little bit about not just the fact that you can learn from failures and that trying to avoid risk by inaction can actually be the biggest risk. Can you Can you project or talk a little bit about some of the ways to avoid those risks?
You know, the way I approach this is sort of holistically. I've really been a student of the success equation for all these years. And, you know, Tom, everything that we do or don't do comes from our core beliefs. The problem with our beliefs is that they're inherited when we're 1, 2, and 3 years old. Somebody's installed them. Many people live their entire lives and never question those beliefs. So my mantra is question everything. When we take charge of our beliefs and really know what they are, modify, ratify, remodel, do what we need to do, now we open doors to possibility, and this allows us to create intention, proactive intention around what we want. And when we have intention, we see opportunity. Once we have opportunity in our sights now, do we know what we're doing? Have we studied under guys like you? Have we studied under guys like me or Fortunato or John Schaub? Have we studied under someone that's given us a toolbox to know what to do? If we have that toolbox, we get results. And those results automatically redefine our belief system. And here we go. A life that's abundant and deliberate goes upward and outward. Question I ask everybody is your life today significantly more amazing and abundant than it was last year at this time? And if the answer is no, it drives you right to the hard questions, your beliefs, your intention, your toolbox. And so success is a multifaceted equation, and toolbox techniques, those are certainly part of it, but they're not the whole of it.
It's a delicate balance too, isn't it, between how continuing education, learning from others. I always promote people to don't reinvent the wheel, go take advantage of others who've been down the path of experience and learn everything you can from them. I think part of what we've just discussed says that keep doing that along the way, but don't sit on the by the side of the road forever. You got to jump in, and once you jump in, it's significantly in for motivation and incentive to learn. So
absolutely. And, you know, the fact of the matter, Tom, this takes a full-on effort doing what we do. And some people want those results, but they simply don't have the time, they don't have the passion, but intellectually they know they should. And this is where the beauty of this sport is there's still no excuse. You can partner with somebody who really has those expertise. You can put somebody in the plane with you that really has got a lot of hours in their flying and knows what they're doing. So still never an excuse to not take some form of action, right?
Right, indeed. And boy, it's amazing how much more your antenna goes up for learning and finding people that you can learn from and finding people that can help you reduce risk because they've been through some of the failures and have learned how to avoid it. There's that incentive just jumps way up once your skin is in the game. We have Greg Pinneo with us today talking about the philosophy of investing. And we're here on KDOW 1220 AM, the Wall Street Business Network. Stay with us. We'll be back in just a moment on Real Estate Power Investing.
Welcome back to Real Estate Radio Power Investing. Streaming live on iHeart, TuneIn, and KDOW.biz. For more information on today's topic or guest, visit TomWilsonProperties.com. That's TomWilsonProperties.com. Again, your host for today's edition of Real Estate Radio Power Investing, Tom K. Wilson.
It's a great pleasure to have for the first time on Real Estate Radio Power Investing, Greg Pinneo, who's a longtime investor, a longtime educator, and we're enjoying his views on the philosophy behind it all. Greg, let's talk a little bit about when you teach about success upon delivery of your proposition. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Certainly. This sort of came by way of survival. When I was very young, I knew how I bought my first house, Tom, and so I just wanted to rinse and repeat. So I got a list of everybody who owned their homes free and clear, and I started calling them, asking direct questions of proposition. Would you like to sell me your home? I'd be very interested. Would you sell me your home? I got no after no after no after no, and it was having an effect on me. A real effect on me, effect on the way I felt about myself, the effect on my motivation. And so I took it to the lab, as it were, and I tore it apart. And what I came up with is that I needed to tie the success equation to the delivery of my proposition, not to ultimately the outcome or the response that somebody might give me to my proposition. Success upon delivery. Everywhere I go out and I do things not tied to the outcome, tied to the fact that I know that these are the correct things to do to achieve success. So when I do what I want to do, when I deliver my proposition, I immediately declare success. Success upon delivery is powerful. It's huge. I mean, I've been told no 80 million times in 40 years, and I'm holding up pretty well.
Okay.
There you go.
It's amazing. I've been in Silicon Valley for 48 years before it was called that. And I have entrepreneurial friends and know many folks and many stories about a lot of companies. Many are household names today that had a great idea and got the no many, many, many times before they got a yes. But they indeed believed in what they were doing. It did not reduce their delivery of their proposition, and they finally connected with the right, usually with the right financing.
You bet. Yeah, we've got to stay motivated, and that's a tool to stay motivated, tying your success to the delivery of your proposition. No question about it.
And I think, interestingly, each no, if you have the right mindset about it, can help you kind of retune your delivery and your proposition so that you have a better chance of yes. What do you think about that?
Oh, gosh, you debrief everything, Tom. If anything goes right, you debrief it. If anything goes wrong, you debrief it. We're constantly students in the game of life. I mean, written debriefs along the way. Self-correction. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I've often felt that folks, when they have a failure, they're so devastated by it and maybe embarrassed that they tend to run and hide and try to sweep it under the rug when they really should, go through a little grieving, but then go back and analyze it and figure out what it is that you can learn from that you can add to your toolkit to move forward with more success. We have Greg Pinneo with us on the program with us today, who's a longtime educator, and we're talking about the philosophy of investing. Stay with us on KDOW 1220 AM, Real Estate Radio Power Investing.
Welcome back to Real Estate Radio Power Investing. Streaming live on iHeart, TuneIn, and KDOW.biz. For more information on today's topic or guest, visit TomWilsonProperties.com. That's TomWilsonProperties.com. Again, your host for today's edition of Real Estate Radio Power Investing, Tom K. Wilson.
How great it is to have Greg Pinneo on with us for the first time on Real Estate Radio Power Investing. Long-time investor in homes and multifamily, construction multifamily, commercial, and his And we're talking about his favorite subject, I think, and that is educating others and sharing with them what he has learned with his experiences to help others be more successful quicker. Greg, we've had a really nice discussions here about some of your philosophies. Maybe we can wrap up in this segment talking a little bit about the nuts and bolts. That is the next extension of using those philosophies. We touched a little bit earlier in the beginning of the program about financing and deal structuring and leverage and so forth. Can you talk a little bit about some nuts and bolts things that you've learned and suggestions?
I'd love to. I have some very, very strong opinions about this nuts and bolts topic, having done so many deals and really put them all under the debrief scope. I've got some conclusions that I try to share with my students, Tom, that creating wealth is a bit like understanding physics. There's principles involved in wealth. And so I believe in demand real estate. Not all real estate is demand real estate. I only go after and proactively hunt for demand real estate. Proactive was the word I just used, not on accident. Of the last 200 buildings I bought, 2 have been listed, and none have been on some adversity list, right? So they're not in pre-foreclosure, foreclosure, this, that, or the other thing. So they're not listed, and they're not on some published list.
Tell us what you mean by demand real estate.
Demand, meaning days on market are very, very low, meaning that everybody wants this piece of real estate.
Okay.
It's a high
product that's in high demand. Okay.
And low days on market.
Mm-hmm. Excuse me, but some would say, well, shoot, why would you bother going in a market like that? It's too tough.
Yeah. But you see, control of an asset that everyone wants is the key. Buying is the easy part in this equation. What you do with it from there becomes where all the wheels fall off with people's investing. You've got to manage what you have. You've got to rent what you've had. You've got to fill that. You've got to find an assignment, money, a buyer. All those things are perpetuated by the quality of product you put under your control.
And as you said there, eventually you have to sell it. So always when I've bought product, I like to be in an area that I know when I'm ready to dispose of it, I have a high probability of getting a good sale rather than just finding a good deal and not knowing if I'll ever be able to sell it again.
Absolutely. Right. I can buy half of this country on a note, nothing down, deed of trust, very low interest. Who cares? It doesn't serve me. I want demand real estate. And then in the finance structure, I'm wanting to involve the world of private money. You know, Tom, there's a world right now that has funds sitting in a savings account, a CD, a money market fund, a self-directed IRA earning less than 3%. There's billions of dollars sitting in that state right now. We can do better for people than that. We can offer them prime collateral, lower loan to values. We can offer them customer service, return, everything in excess of what the big banks are offering, what the conventional institutions are offering. We can give them the security they want, the insurance they want. We can do that for people. And so I'm about helping people buy real estate or lend on real estate. And so my acquisitions are financed, oftentimes involving the seller in financing and all the benefits that has for a seller. Oftentimes it's using private money. I believe in the principle of leverage. I believe in the principle of creating cash flow. Cash flow is the greatest security you can have in any real estate. It becomes what allows that real estate to survive through every economic up and down is the cash flow. And of course, cash flow is mostly about that underlying financing and how it's structured, that it doesn't adjust, move all over. If anything, it adjusts downwardly in certain markets. So the negotiable terms of a real estate transaction become the heartbeat of the deal itself. and how to negotiate those, what you're negotiating, right down to exactly the wording you use in structuring every deal. The collateral on the property, the movable collateral, the ability to take the note and slice it up into smaller notes and redistribute those with proper collateral. All of these tools become really, really critical in creating growth and wealth in your portfolio.
I think many investors who utilize a service or a team that has a lot of experience in doing this sort of thing don't. It's hard for them to fully appreciate and understand how much work goes into and how much knowledge and experience is utilized to create really good deals.
Oh, I couldn't agree more, Tom. Like you, I have put hundreds of hours on CDs, educating my students, hundreds of pages of written documents and workbooks that correspond. There's so much to know in this sport, it can be overwhelming. It's a little bit like aviation. I'm a pilot, right? So aviation starts with a 172 Cessna, and then, of course, there's the space shuttle. And boy, I got to tell you, there's a lot of equipment between those two planes. And so there's this learning curve is endless, and experience is your greatest teacher. So draw from those people who have really done this, who are really in the arena, really, really swinging the sword day in and day out. That's your best asset.
And I think you keep educating yourself so you can ask good questions, so you can select good sources and team members, but by golly, leverage yourself by not reinventing the wheel and lean on others who've been successful. We have Greg Pinneo with us today talking about the philosophy of real estate investing. Stay with us for a wrap-up with Greg in just a moment.
Welcome back to Real Estate Radio Power Investing. Streaming live on iHeart, TuneIn, and KDOW.biz. For more information on today's topic or guest, visit TomWilsonProperties.com. That's TomWilsonProperties.com. Again, your host for today's edition of Real Estate Radio Power Investing, Tom K. Wilson.
Well, it's been a fun program with Greg Pinneo. It's been wonderful to have him on and talking about philosophy and some paradigm shifters. Hopefully you've picked up a few things that might make you have some conversations and think about it twice, and that can be fundamental support for the rest of your success. Greg, you got some kind of wrap up words or thoughts?
Well, first of all, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you and your listening audience, Tom. I truly mean that. I have a heart. I feel so grateful for the world of real estate and the freedom it's given me for 4 decades. And so I have a heart to help people in any way I can. You're gracious to give me permission to let your listening audience know that if I can be of any help, if I can answer any question you have, if we can have a conversation about whatever it is that's on your mind, my direct cell phone number, my only number, that my wife doesn't have another number. My number is area code 206-226-7777. 206-226-7777. You can text me at that. You could leave me an email, Greg at thecorco.com. Greg at TheCorco.com. I'd be happy to answer any questions. And again, Tom, I so appreciate the opportunity to be with you and hear what you're doing. So,
thank you, Greg. Any closing thought for about 30 seconds or so here? Any closing kind of thing you want to leave with listeners?
A piece of script that changed me when I was 18 was written by a guy named Henry David Thoreau, and he scripted, I went to the woods because I wanted to live deliberately. I wanted to live deep, to suck out all the marrow of life, to put to rout all that was not life, not, when I die, discover I've not lived. I would encourage everyone that I get a chance to talk to live a deliberate life, a purposeful life, to take this thing seriously, because we get this shot to make a big difference.
Thank you, Greg. Wonderful closing thoughts. It's wonderful to have you on the program. I got a lot from it. Boy, do I have a lucky job here. I get to ask really experienced people some my favorite questions and learn from them. And I hope you got enjoyed that today, all of our listeners. And remember to go to TomWilsonProperties.com. You can find there a lot of education for investors, including all of our podcasts with all of our guests. And it was great having Greg on today. We would look forward to having Greg back again in the near future, and also to look forward to having you explore all the education and podcasts that are on our website. So this is Real Estate Radio Power Investing. Tom K. Wilson on KDOW 1220 AM, the Wall Street Business Network. Thank you for being with us today, and the only thing that matters is what you do next.